Good evening, everyone. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall. Here. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Stevenson.
Present.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Here.
Mr. Sanker. Mr. Breeden.
Here.
We do have 6 out of 7. Mr. Sanker did email me and say he might be a little late because he's driving down from Westchester. The topic on the agenda this evening is a discussion of the water system issues and to allow for public comment. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Stevenson for presiding over a difficult meeting in my absence. Letters were sent to Greater Cincinnati Waterworks and the Ohio EPA and the administration asking them to be present for this meeting. Greater Cincinnati Waterworks and Ohio EPA both responded in writing, correct, Mr. Gears, that they could not attend, and one of them, as I recall, suggested maybe getting together and seeing when there was a meeting date that was better suited for everybody. But they did reply that they could not attend this evening. So I just want to get that on the record. Mr. Thompson.
I would like to, if people don't mind, to read their responses in full.
Do you have those with you?
I have them if you don't.
I have, do you have the one from EPA?
I do.
Okay. I have Cincinnati's.
Without any objection, we'll go ahead and enter those into the record.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Okay, so this is from Michael Costello. He is the Deputy Director of Government and Community Relations with the Ohio EPA. Thank you for your correspondence. Ohio EPA is looking forward to sitting down as a group as soon as possible to discuss the ongoing situation in Norwood, along with Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, Mayor Williams, and yourself in your capacity as Norwood Safety Service Director. Our Southwest District Office will be reaching out to Mayor Williams' office to discuss possible dates in which that meeting can occur. Given this, I am respectfully declining the request of Norwood City Council to appear on August 20th. Thank you, Michael Costello, Deputy Director, Government and Community Relations, Ohio EPA. And the second letter, dear Norwood Council members, the City of Cincinnati and Greater Cincinnati Waterworks is in receipt of your August 15th, 2019 letter requesting Kathy B. Bailey, Director of Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, attend a special City of Norwood Council meeting planned for August 20th, 2019 to discuss and allow public comment as to Norwood's water system. The City of Cincinnati, through its Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, has been happy to provide short-term remedial assistance as requested by and under contract with the City of Norwood. However, questions about the Norwood public water system should be directed to City of Norwood officials as the operators with detailed knowledge of the system. It is not appropriate for Kathy B. Bailey or other Greater Cincinnati Waterworks personnel to participate in the special council meeting between Norwood officials and Norwood residents. As you may be aware, Norwood and Cincinnati entered into a remedial assistance agreement on July 15, 2019, that runs through August 31, 2019. At the conclusion of this contract, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks will provide a written report of work done and high-level recommendations to move forward based on work completed and observations made. This information may be helpful to you as you worked swiftly to make decisions about your water system. In the interim, and due to the seriousness of this matter, we felt we would provide you feedback on how Greater Cincinnati Waterworks would proceed if we were in this situation. Overall, the city's goal would be to immediately take steps to assess and reassess constantly the ongoing safety of the water and implement long-term solutions to ensure the same. Action steps would include: 1. Immediately hire an engineering firm to provide an assessment or report on system conditions with specific and urgent tasks to determine if any use of Norwood water tanks is safe. 2. Correspond with Ohio EPA to identify their requirements and priorities for the Norwood water system. 3. Partner with potential water systems that can assist and provide long-term solutions, in this case, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. With the Greater Cincinnati Waterworks and the City of Cincinnati, work with Greater Cincinnati Waterworks and the City of Cincinnati to develop options that outline financing and costs for long-term involvement and operation of the Norwood public water system. 4. Cooperate and share financial conditions, knowledge of water system assets, and operations with Greater Cincinnati Waterworks to help develop options for a long-term contract. 5, consider a new temporary operator of record that can focus solely on the water system and help develop long-term plans for the future. 6, review proposal options as outlined with the intent to establish a long-term agreement for operation of the Norwood water system. 7, promptly arrive at a decision to negotiate and develop a long-term contract to improve and maintain Norwood's water system. In conclusion, maintenance and sustainability of a water system is critical for the community that it serves, and we hope you find the action items outlined above helpful in determining next steps. Sincerely, Patrick Dehaney, City Manager, City of Cincinnati.
We do have 3 requests to address council. Would you like to hear those now, prior to the discussion? First is Amy Wolfenbarger. If you'll come forward and give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council. And of course, the air conditioning comes on right at this time.
Hi, Amy Wolfenbarger, 5406 Carthage Avenue, resident of Norwood. I got here late for the last...
Excuse me, could you speak up? We can hardly hear you.
I got here late last week during the council meeting, so unfortunately I was not able to speak. Honestly, I wasn't too worried on the way over because I wasn't expecting the mayor to be here, and then he was. So after last week's meeting, I was under the assumption that the mayor would be present tonight to address citizens' concerns, so I was pretty excited to know that I really didn't miss out on an opportunity to speak. But tonight the mayor's not here, so I have to say, I'm a little disappointed. Once again, we find ourselves in another situation where administration behaves badly, and there's nothing that can be done to hold them accountable. This time their inaction has put the entirety of our city at risk, as well as numerous others from outside our community who come here to work, shop, or eat. This is unacceptable behavior. It makes it very difficult for community members to trust you. And when I say you, I mean the mayor. When you have quietly gambled with the safety of our water. Is our water safe? They say it is. I want to believe it is. I do believe it is. Yet there's this thing in the back of my head that continually has me question whether or not it really is. There have been questions from Cincinnati in the public records request that stated, that Cincinnati questioned whether or not the water was being properly tested. Cincinnati has also suggested we turn over testing to them. Have we done that? I trust in Cincinnati's abilities to provide us with safe water. They've been providing water to their customers from the Ohio River for over 200 years. I really believe that they know what they are doing. Having said that, I trust in their recommendations, and I strongly wish that the city would follow those. Again, in a letter from Cranley, it stated, while Ohio EPA states our samples are clean, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks cannot verify whether the number and location of samples are appropriate to the situation. It's my understanding from something else that I read that Norwood is collecting the samples and Cincinnati is testing those samples. So that statement alone, Greater Cincinnati Waterworks cannot verify whether the number and locations of samples are appropriate to the situation. That is concerning. The letter that was just read again stated that, a strong recommendation to appoint someone else to be in control of our water right now. Again, given by Cincinnati, who I thoroughly trust with the safety of our water. Lastly, and a little bit of this was just addressed in the letter that was just read out loud, but I'm curious as to what will happen when our contract does expire with Cincinnati on the 31st, as well as what is going to happen when we've satisfied our violations with the EPA. who I in no way is doing their job either, as what I've read in Ohio Revised Code. This is far from over, and we need long-term plans, and those plans need to be adhered to, and if they're not, we need accountability. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfenberg. Next, we have Dave Bollinger. Again, if you'll give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council.
My name is Dave Bollinger. My address is 7465.
Pull that mic back by you.
My address is 7465 Lakota Springs Drive, Westchester, Ohio, 45069. I just had a couple of questions I want to ask, and mainly of Marilyn. I think she can explain this better to us. You had a couple of conversations with people from the EPA, am I correct?
Yes.
And
Can you speak
I think
into
on your first conversation,
Yes.
on your first conversation with them, they basically told you the water was safe, not leaking into.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak a little? I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's right over me.
On your first conversation with them, I believe they indicated that the water was safe. It's not leaking into our drinking water.
Correct.
Is that correct? Then after that, you had some more conversations with people from the EPA. I think you got pretty high up there. And at this time, someone told you that, well, yeah, it probably is leaking into there and has been for quite a time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did anybody
Yes.
from the EPA ask you to keep that quiet?
Yes.
Did they say why they wanted you to keep that quiet?
Let me get my notes.
Okay.
The first time I talked to them, I was on vacation during all of this, and I had to come back and do all my notes. I spoke to them when I was on vacation. I'm going to read some of just my notes then. It's going to be the easiest way for me to say what went on there. I originally called their public interest center and spoke with Heather, who said that there could be some leakage from the tanks into the drinking water, so I wanted more information. I called Mariano Hensel.
Mariano Hansel.
Thank you. All these names I'm going to pronounce wrong, I'm afraid. He's from the Drinking Water Division and did several other reports. He said he would call me back. He called me back, and on the phone was Jeff Davidson from the Drinking Water Division and Bonnie Buthker, the district chief. As I spoke to them, I told them I was going to report back to the residents. So what they told me, I repeated back twice to them. And that was the only way there would be any leakage was if there was a major, if there were major pressure drops, such as a major fire or major water main breaks. I question those because we have fires all the time. Well, God forbid, not all the time, but we do have fires, and we have had quite a bit of water main breaks. And they told me it had to be much bigger than that. They had to be really major. Repeated this back to them twice, so I went to Facebook and I wrote a post saying exactly that. I guess it was on July 22nd. I had contacted Mariano, and I was asking them if they would come to a meeting with residents. And during the conversation, we started talking about the water pressure again. And all of a sudden, the terminology changed from major pressure drop to some water fluctuation. And that leakage would be possible and it would be minimal. Well, I wasn't happy. I mean, I had already reported out to the residents. So I had several calls with several people. And I finally did get a call back from Michael Gostella. And I told him I felt like I was fed that information to give to the residents. And he neither agreed nor disagreed. But I told him I was going to retract my post and say that there could be leakage, because that's what they're now saying. And no, he did not want me to do that. He said that would cause mistrust for the EPA. I said, hey, what about me? I am not going to put out incorrect information to our residents. We went back and forth for quite a while. Actually, I was standing in a alley in Saugatuck, Michigan. We're yelling back and forth on the phone until my husband came in and stopped me and said, we're done. He called me back and said, would you wait to put out a retraction? We're going to put out a press release. And I said, okay. And they did put out a press release. And then the following day, I put out a notice saying that we could be getting some leakage due to fluctuation of water.
But they did in fact ask you to keep the information they gave you quiet because it would cause mistrust. Wow.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
And I'll say, Dave, I was so upset about this. We came home from vacation 2 days early. It was really an upsetting situation.
Speaks volumes. I mean, we've got an administration that we can't trust, is coming nowhere near to tell us what's going on. Now we've got the Ohio EPA that wants to keep things quiet. It's unacceptable. This is ridiculous. We've got an operator of record that has not done his job, and according to Ohio Revised Code 743.08, council has it within their ability to get rid of him. It states that you have the authority to initiate a investigative committee to look at all the papers, records, and basically anything to do with it. And that any officer found to be in violation of negligence or just not doing it shall be liable and removed from that office. It's probably what needs to happen. Looks like everybody's taken concern about this except for our administrators. City of Cincinnati is. I'd like to say EPA is, but apparently they're not. They're not to be trusted. Several members of council are, and we don't think it goes unnoticed because people know what you're doing and it's appreciated. That's unacceptable when we got the EPA wanting one of our council people to keep quiet because they don't want people to not trust them when they're lying to us. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, sir. Next is Liam Shanahan. Again, if you'll give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council.
Liam Shanahan, 3935 South Madison.
Thank you.
Can you hear?
You'll have to bend down or hold it.
All right. Pick it up. This will be uncomfortable.
I know, I'm sorry, I apologize.
I want to thank City Council for hosting this public meeting, giving us citizens the opportunity to ask questions, voice our opinions, and hopefully get some answers. As residents, we deserve a city government that works for us. We deserve to know when our health could be at risk, how the issue is going to be mitigated, and guidance for how to ensure our families are safe and as healthy as possible. We elect officials to guide our city forward and ensure that public services are provided to us in a safe, efficient manner. When it has come to our water system, it is evident that our city government is failing us. Last week's City Council meeting was enlightening, to say the least. To begin, we were informed that an accounting error was the cause of years of the water fund being in the red. It has been fixed. But is this accounting error for the cause for no updates being made to our city water system in years? How many accounting errors still haven't been found? I want to commend Councilpersons Hanrahan and Bonzel for sharing the information that you guys have found on your own. But personally, I've been disappointed by the lack of communication from our city about our water. We've heard more concern expressed publicly by the mayor of Cincinnati, his staff, and the staff of the Greater Cincinnati Water Works than we have from our own mayor. I don't know about you, but I find this unacceptable. It is the responsibility of our local government to be transparent and open with us about all possible health issues in the city. According to ORC 743.08, and I paraphrase, this legislative authority has the authority to investigate all books, papers, and matters pertaining to the management of our water system, and if neglect of duty or malfeasance on the part of the person in charge of that water is found, he or she needs to be held liable and removed from office. I hope Council begins this process sooner than later so we can truly find the extent of the issues and neglect of our water system, and we can begin the work that I'm sure will take a very long time and be very expensive to fix our water and ensure that we have safe drinking water in our city.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Shanahan. Okay. So the floor is yours. The chair would like to acknowledge Mr. Sanker arrived. Thank you. We have no officials here to ask questions. I know that was the intent, but Mrs. Hanrahan?
Thank you, Madam President. After the mayor spoke, where's my voice again? I'm sorry. I'm going hoarse again. I spoke too long there. He had said that they had done some work after the initial study. And I couldn't get on the EPA site today. It just wouldn't let me on. And so I called Dixon Engineering. And here is an email from the guy in charge of Norwood and what's going on. And he is actually, he's responding to Joe. So can I just pass this over to Joe Gears to read the bottom part? It appears there had been some work done.
There was work done in 2014 or 15.
In 2015.
From the Good Morning Joe.
Yes, please.
All right. Good morning, Joe. Per our discussion about the 2015 repairs, this is the info that I have. The initial maintenance inspection was performed in May of 2014, and the report sent to Norwood in July of 2014. We started discussions about repairs to the tanks in late November and got a quote from UCL Inc. of Cincinnati late January of 2015. The repairs on both tanks were related to health issues and included exterior patching on both tanks, which included welded patches of 12 holes combined on the two tank, repair of 3 vents on the older tank and 1 vent on the 1930 larger tank. The repairs were completed over a 2-day period starting March 19, 2015. A flap gate on the overflow pipe and a concrete splash pad was recommended for both tanks, and it was decided that the Norwood staff would do that work. The total proposal under the issued PO was $20,050, but there was $15,000 billed to the project, which included Dixon's specifications and inspection during those repairs. Any other questions, let me know. Earl S. Strader, Dixon Engineering Incorporated.
Thank you. Mrs. Hanrahan?
And if I could follow up. This morning I also called water quality at Greater Cincinnati Water Works because the question had been raised about organic matter testing. They told me I needed to contact Joe Gears on that, which I did, and I think I just got this a few seconds. Well, no, it says I got it earlier. I missed it. And I'd like to read his response. Testing for organic matter is done by GCWW, The testing that was being done on the one tank on a daily basis is for free chloride residual along with total chloride residual. Also, there are microbiological samples being taken which have all come back negative.
Having been a person who did the testing in the past as health commissioner, I want to get this on the record. What the city of Norwood is required to do as the operator of their own water system is to test for total chlorine and free chlorine every day. That's done by health department staff. I used to do it personally. We are required to do testing for bacteria, and the EPA tells us how many samples we are to do. When I did it, it was 15. I'm assuming it's the same. It's based upon population and it's based upon your square footage. You have to submit your places to the EPA on a map that will demonstrate to them that you are testing in all different parts of the city, so that you're getting a good picture of not just one part of the city, but all coverage from all of the city. And you have a different mix of businesses and houses and things like that. The EPA has to approve the number of those things that are done. We collect those still at the health department, and those are taken down to the City of Cincinnati Health Department laboratory, because they do their own water testing. So Norwood takes their tests down to the Cincinnati Health Department lab, same place that Greater Cincinnati Waterworks takes their samples. In addition, every so many years, and I don't want to comment for sure on the number, but number of years in between, because it's all changing, the city is required to test for lead and copper. And again, those are sent to a lab out in Sharonville that is a certified lab, and those results are sent back to the city. When the samples are taken down to the Greater Cincinnati Health Department laboratory, papers come back to the health department. The information that is on those papers and the amount of chlorine that is tested in the water system every day, there's a form that you fill out. All of that information is gathered on a monthly report on an Ohio EPA prescribed form. We have to write the numbers down for every day that the chlorine is tested. You can't just say there's enough chlorine in it. You have to write the numbers for each day's testing. Then you come up with an average. Those are submitted to the EPA, as well as the fact that you are doing the bacteriological testing. If a sample comes back positive, and during my term one of them did, you are required to investigate, and if necessary, issue what's called a boil alert, because if it comes back positive, something's going on in your system where a bacteria has entered the system, and you have to let people know. At the end of each year, I think it's probably by May of the following year, a report is required by the EPA to be sent out to all of the citizens who pay for water. So if you are a renter, you may not get it, but if you are owner and you pay for the water, you should receive a water report that is generated by the health department. I worked with Greater Cincinnati Waterworks personally to develop the template that we have. Greater Cincinnati Health, I retired in 2008 from the health department, so this form's been in existence a long time. The numbers from those forms that we turn into the EPA every year are what is put into that report. All the other stuff, the organic matter, the bromine, the chromium, all the other stuff that's in that report comes directly from Cincinnati Waterworks, because they are the person who produces water. And when you produce water and sell it, those are the people who are required to do it. So to say that the city of Norwood didn't test for organic matter, you are correct. We are not required to do that. That is what Greater Cincinnati Waterworks is supposed to do, because they are the maker of the water. They're the provider. I just want to get that on the record. In the past, there were a couple of other city employees who had water purveyor licenses. It's a difficult process to get. When we were first required to have a water purveyor, we didn't have one, and I had to go out and find one. And we contracted with somebody until we could get people trained. We had a couple of public works people who eventually passed the test that is very difficult. They could do the day-to-day things. They knew that inside and out. They had some trouble with the math part of it. So this gentleman that we had contracted with worked with them and got a couple of people certified. Later on, those people decided to let their certifications expire because they didn't want the liability, and Mr. Gears had his own license. And so Mr. Gears took over as the licensed operator of our system. I give you that as background to begin the discussion. If any of the water samples had come back positive, you would have known it. Cincinnati Lab would have, if Norwood didn't do it, Cincinnati Lab would have been all over it because they were the ones who report the test. So there have been no, as the mayor has stated, there's been no positive bacteria samples in any recent future. So I will give you that as background information from someone who does it. And as I said at the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission meeting today during the discussion, the person who does the testing now may be the only person on the face of the earth who is more anal than I am. So he continues to do those tests. Mr. Braden.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. So you said you had one test that failed when you were...
It's back in 2004, 2005.
Okay, so 14 years ago, or, okay, so...
And by the way, investigation had happened to be in an apartment building where illegal plumbing had taken place. And that was where the contamination came from. We had to immediately test. We did boil alerts for the apartment building. We tested above and below and retested those. And of course, when the building department and the plumbing department went in, we found illegal plumbing going on. And that's where the contamination occurred, inside the building. Yes.
And
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I appreciate
because the reason why I asked that is because Mr. Williams showed up at our regular council meeting with 14 years of records of good water testing.
I wasn't here. I don't know.
So I guess what I'm taking from that is 14 years our water has tested well. And then you're also telling me that we test our water daily and it tests
Chlorine.
Well.
Not for bacteria, for chlorine.
The health department tests it daily and it tests well.
For chlorine, yes.
And it hasn't failed since that you know of, since what we just talked about. So
I don't get those reports, but I can assure you, if we failed, if there was a positive bacteria sample, you would know it.
So
there would
then,
be a boil alert issue.
So continue with that. Our water reports that we get, that I get, that you get yearly, come back and tell us that our water is good. I haven't seen anything bad. I see them every year. See them every year. Cincinnati tells us they test for further micro whatever, so they say it's good because they're the provider, they're the creator, as you say. I think that's what you. So if anyone has any issues that think that our water is bad, also if you Home Depot and Lowe's also sells water tests. So if you want to test the water, you can do it yourself. So I guess I'm confused. So
I think the confusion is in the tanks, and that what was in the tanks and how much comes into the tanks, when it comes from the tanks into the system. Those are the kinds of things, and I cannot speak to the tanks. I didn't have anything to do with the tanks. I can tell you that every 3 years the EPA comes down for an audit. They sat down with me at the health department, and we had to show them all of our forms that we sent into them. They then moved to the Public Works Department and spoke with the guys who work on the water crew and questioned them on how they handle water main breaks. They then went up to the towers with Mr. Gears and the Public Works people, and I don't know what happened at the towers. But I can tell you that every 3 years, Mariano Hansel, who was there when I was there, he is nobody you want to mess with. was visiting those 3 places every 3 years. My question is, if work was done, obviously work was done in 2014 or 2015. Apparently the report wasn't sent in, but I guess I question what happened in 2016 when the EPA was here to do inspections. That's my question. Where were they in 2016?
I agree that our water system needs updated, that our tanks need probably replaced. I'm not disagreeing with any of that, but I'm saying our water is, from everything that I can see, we're testing good. So that's the only thing I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Anyone else? Mr. Bonso.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just kind of want to refer back to the letter from the Cincinnati City Manager. So in here it includes, I guess, some action steps to potentially look at us doing. I personally, and I've made this very clear to the mayor about how I feel about this, I personally do not trust Joe Gears to continue to be the operator of record for our water system. I don't think that he is the right person to be there, and I think that the trust is no longer there. Just for one, the absolute lack of communication to this body alone. I mean, to keep us updated on what's going on, let alone the lack of communication to the citizens about what's going on, causes me a lot of issues. The city of Cincinnati they've made offers both in here and in an email that was obtained through a public records request that was sent to Joe Gears and the mayor, that they are willing to loan us an operator of record that can actually focus on our water system, a true professional that will solely work on that has experience. And I think that we should consider taking them up on that offer. I don't know what exactly we can do without the mayor's approval. I think the mayor through the safety service director, has some broad authority over how the water system is run or who runs the water system. However, I just want it made known that I do think that would be a very vital thing. And especially if you do a 6-month contract with that, it would provide us some kind of oversight, or basically it would provide some help to try to find out what still needs to be done in the system that's not getting done. I mean, we know right now that the water tanks are getting repaired, or there's a plan to repair them, but we still have no long-term plan for what the replacement of those tanks looks like, or plan for what the replacement of the many miles of water mains is going to look like in the city. We know that the neglect started way before this mayor, so it's not all fault rests on him for the lack of action before he took office. However, at this point, we have got to figure out, I guess, how we move forward here. And I think potentially moving forward with that would be a very smart thing. In addition, I think potentially exploring a long-term partnership with the city of Cincinnati to operate the water system also could provide benefits to our citizens. Cincinnati they're world renowned for their operation of their water system.
That's correct.
Sorry?
You're correct.
Yes.
We have some of the best water in the country.
Yes, and people actually come from all over the world to come and tour their facilities and to learn about their processes. Essentially, I think it would be very smart of us to explore our options and to at least learn about what it could look like for Greater Cincinnati Waterworks to operate our system. Just so other people understand, there are many other municipalities that has Greater Cincinnati Waterworks operating their system. One of the most notable ones, I would say, is the city of Mason. Greater Cincinnati Waterworks operates their complete system, from the retail billing to the distribution system to the meter reading. They operate the system. In the city of Mason, for anybody concerned, the city of Mason is in no threat to be taken over by the city of Cincinnati, just because they operate the water system. It's very separate conversations. And so I think it would be wise for us to look at that. From the informal conversations that I've had with people that are in the know when it comes to it's Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, essentially they are not going to do the work of and kind of letting us know what that looks like by just the request of one council member. What they are looking for is a resolution from our body, if we want to move forward with that direction, asking them to go ahead and start the process to look into a long-term contract and what that might look like. So all of that being said, I do think that we should consider at a future council meeting passing a resolution that requests that so that we can move forward. And even if we decide that, hey, we're going to operate maybe we'll just operate our own system at the end of the day, just moving forward with this process alone is going to be extremely informative for us as a legislative authority, as a council, and also for our citizens too, that'll be kind of watching how things play out. I think we can all probably say that we are not experts on how to operate a water system. I don't know all of the long-term capital needs that a water system needs. And I personally don't think that our operator of record does either. So I would just love to hear feedback from other council members to see if that might be a direction that we might want to go passing a resolution. So, thanks, Madam President.
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Bonsall. I think to be fair, we ask a lot of our safety service director. He does a lot of jobs. Just water purveyor is one of them, and I think currently we need somebody who can actually focus on the issue at hand, and so I tend to agree with Greater Cincinnati Waterworks' suggestion that we look into some kind of a temporary operator of record. I think if there's a fear about finances or anything like that might arise from that, I think that we as a council, whether through resolution or just letter or whatever, state to the mayor that we would be willing to appropriate the necessary funds to cover the cost associated with setting up a temporary position like that. So I think that's just a little bit of something proactive that we can do to help that we get the proper kind of focus on the issue that we have currently.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Madam President. I like to think of myself as a professional plumber, but no way in shape or form do I have every, I don't know exactly the way this works, but from my understanding, we have to have those tanks there, regardless if Cincinnati takes us, takes that over or not. And I thought that we do get our water from Cincinnati.
We do.
So if they have world-renowned water, so then we have world-renowned. That's my first comment. So
Cincinnati has a micro charcoal filtration system that takes out so many of the impurities. They had it well before most other people in the United States. You have to remember that it comes from them all through those pipes that come miles and miles and miles and miles. Those tanks are required for a couple reasons, not only for pressure, but the EPA requires that you have a day's worth of water in the event that Greater Cincinnati Waterworks loses pumping, or that they don't have the ability to provide water to us for a day, hence the 6 million gallons. And so that's another reason why those water tanks are there. But they sit there, so I think the issue at hand is how much testing has been done, how good is the water that's been sitting in those tanks.
Well, thank you, Madam President. I can tell you that I consider myself a professional plumber, and we have lead pipes under the ground here, so that's a concern. We need upgrade. Our plumbing system needs upgraded. I'm not denying that. So my other question is,
I will comment that Cincinnati, a lot of pipes in Cincinnati are lead, and as a result of that, Cincinnati adds a product to their water that tends to cling to the inside of pipes that lines them, that makes lead leaching into the lines less likely. I know that both as the person who collected water and as a nurse who used to have to see children that had lead poisoning. So
I have replaced thousands of feet of lead pipe, and I've seen the inside of them. So thank you for that comment. So another thing you said, someone within the health department tests our water. Is that true? So it's not Mr. Gears.
No.
So the incompetence with the water department, I guess Mr. Gears doesn't actually test it. So I guess that's another thing. So like him or not, he doesn't need me to defend him, but he's not the one testing it.
He's responsible for the overall day-to-day operations.
I understood.
I was the health commissioner. I was responsible for the day-to-day operations of the health department. If
Understood.
something messed up, I'm the one that answers, you know.
Thank you.
So he's
Thank
the
you.
operator of record. He's
Thank
the
you.
licensed operator of record.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Mrs. Hanrahan.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to say that I do agree with Mr. Bonzel and Mr. Thompson. And we do get Cincinnati Water now, and they provide the water for a multitude of cities around the area. And I think, we're responsible right now to look at all our options, and I think that's just one of our options that we need to look at. As far as reserve tanks, I have asked a lot of questions, and I think there's some question still up in the air on if we would need a reserve tank if we went with the city of Cincinnati. I haven't been able to get confirmation we would have to have one. Now, somebody might know better than I do here, they probably do, but I haven't been able to get a answer on that yet. And I think until we have Cincinnati Waterworks to talk to us and explain it to us, I'm not sure what we're going to end up doing. I think it would be wonderful, it would be great if we had someone here to do just what you said, to have a diagram of our water tank, show us how they work, where it goes in, what happens, so we have a better understanding. I don't have a whole understanding on how our water system works, and I don't know if anybody here does, but I think that would be a great advantage to us to be able to get that information.
And, you know, Clint Zimmerman is a wealth of information. He was a certified water purveyor, and he's the one who is in the ditches on a daily basis. He is a wealth of information on local water systems. So, yes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Clark.
Apologize for not being at the last meeting. I had some things out of my control. But I too would support a resolution looking, for a different water purveyor. I too believe we need somebody that can focus solely on this. I think we all know that our systems need upgrading. There's lots of issues. I too, I'm not even a plumber. I don't even know anything about that. But I just think it would be invaluable to have somebody come in and take a full look at everything and focus solely on that. I think our residents deserve that. As well as I think we still need to have another informational meeting. I agree with Mrs. Hanrahan. There's still a lot of questions I've not been able to get answered, and I just would feel more comfortable hearing from different parties about how that works. I still don't understand. I've heard that that there was no leakage into our supply. I've heard there is leakage into our supply. There's a lot of answers still that I would like to hear. So that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mrs. Hanrahan.
I'm sorry to speak again. And I want to comment on what Mr. Clark said there too. This is an issue. We can't get anybody to talk to us. The EPA was asked to come. I asked them on the 22nd of July. We asked them again. We got the same answers both times. They're planning on meeting with the city and coming to a meeting. Cincinnati Waterworks doesn't feel they want to get involved at this point. So the question is, how are we going to get this information? Where are we going to get it from? And I think that's our biggest obstacle right now, is getting the information we need.
Thank you, Ms. Hanrahan. There is a contract that the city has with Greater Cincinnati Waterworks to do some of the their testing around the water towers and everything. And I think that was amended a couple of times. It was mentioned at the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission meeting today. So there is a contract in place if you are interested in having someone from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks be the temporary water purveyor or operator of record, perhaps that contract could be amended. Again, it expires, my understanding is it expires August 31st, so something's going to we're probably not going to have all the answers by August 31st as to how to proceed with those tanks. So my guess is that contract is probably going to have to be extended, and it might be an opportunity, if that's the way you want to go, it may be an opportunity to include the operator of record from Greater Cincinnati Waterworks. At the same time, you may want to talk to Mr. Zimmerman to see if he wants to reactivate his license as a secondary or a backup person. As I said, he is a wealth of information. Mr. Thompson.
I'd like to point out that, as you said...
If he's willing to do it, I don't even know. I'll throw his name out there.
Don't want to speak for him. I'd like to point out that, as you said, we honestly in council only know that there's contracts because we've requested records that let us know that there were contracts. We've had no communication from the administration stating that there have been contracts signed. We don't know how much, unless I don't know, maybe we want to do it. Can we request from the auditor a report on expenditures?
I think the message today was $150,000 is what we're paying the Cincinnati people.
Well, point of information, there's another public record I just found today where the mayor says, sent a letter to EPA saying that it was up to $210,000. So, but there's no communication.
But we literally, I would love to say that we want to piggyback onto that contract or extend that contract, but I haven't seen a contract.
I haven't either.
None of us have seen a contract. This was sort of my entire point the last meeting was the complete and total lack of communication and transparency. We're all trying to care for the residents of this city. We have a job to do for the residents of this city, most basic of which is water. I mean, all the other stuff we talk about in here all the time. At least let's get this right. And I don't believe we've got the right team in place currently to get this right. So, whether we pass resolution to ask Cincinnati Waterworks to dive a little deeper, or official communications, whatever good that does, you see where that got us to get people to show up here today. It's incredibly frustrating to feel in the dark in this situation, especially knowing that decisions are being made, large amounts of money are being spent without need of appropriation due to the emergency nature. It's not the right way to do it. It's just not.
Again, at the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission meeting this morning, the mayor reported that the one tank was drained and repairs were being made, and then they would fill that back up and they would work on the second one. They would file the report with the EPA, and then once the EPA saw those reports, they would wait for their recommendation as to how to proceed. Because it was questioned at the meeting what financial impact this would have on obviously, if we have to replace those tanks. And I apologize, I think it's 3 million gallons, not 6 million gallons. 3 million gallons. We're not even sure a 3 million gallon tank would fit up there. If the two tanks that are up there are sufficient, do we need to replace it? Waiting for the EPA to report back once those immediate repairs are done. So I think we're going to have a bit of time to wait from a response for the EPA as to their recommendation as to how to proceed. Yes, Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to request a sitting area on top of the tanks so we can overlook Highland Avenue.
I talked to somebody today who said they climbed the water towers when they were kids. That there used to be spiral staircases or something up there, and they climbed them. So, anyway, Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm really glad we called this meeting. I want to first acknowledge in retrospect at our last regular meeting, we didn't actually send an invite to our own health department. And so as we think about moving forward and having conversations, I want to be mindful. I think Madam President did call out a member of the health department and shared our own experience that we make requests as well to hear from our own water department. I think some of the questions raised sound like we could all benefit from some better understanding of the processes that take place. I've been a tenant most of my lifetime in Norwood, and so it's really surprised by some of the information that seemed to be new or unknown to homeowners. I've never really paid attention to it myself until recently. And one thing that's come to mind for me in our last regular meeting and in this meeting, we all have different bits of information. I know that residents have been very proactive in making requests, posting things online, sharing information in different forums, as have council members. And I'd like to ask that the council members consider, with the support of the Clerk of Council's office, providing to the Clerk of Council a record of the information that you're learning. One of the things I'm mindful of is that aside from this meeting, we're not actually in conversation with each other. Mr. Bonsall just shared some information that was unknown to me, but I think as we as a body and future bodies continue to resolve what is known now, it'd be helpful to have all that information in one place. I think that's part of the challenge that we're up against right now. I know that there seems to be a recommendation, number 5 here in conversation about having a new temporary operator of record. I'd be concerned that we don't have any safeguards in place to ensure number 4 happens, that there would be cooperation of sharing of the financial conditions, knowledge of the water system assets and operations. I'm not sure how many people know how to do that at this point in time, actually do that sharing. That doesn't mean I think we should not move forward with exploring our prerogative as a legislative body, but as we're discussing, I just want to be mindful that for the time being, we only have one operator of record, and what that person and the rest of the administration know probably needs to still become known. And so I just want to be, as much as possible, mindful that we need information to still flow. And so I want to draw attention to I think we have an opportunity to learn from each other. I'd like to ask that the Clerk of Council avail the office to be a resource where we can have information synthesized. I think it was correspondence that Councilmember Hanrahan had read out by the Clerk of Council outlined a lot of history. I don't know if everybody has a copy of that letter. I don't think I received a copy of that, but that would be helpful in trying to figure out what do these recommendations mean. I know we all received a copy of the public records request. There's some information on there in terms of things that have been completed, are in process, or in planning. And again, I think it would be helpful if all of that can be compiled so that as we continue to move forward, we're working from a set of information that we can all reflect on and make some wise decisions on. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Mr. Thompson.
I'd just like to say that I think Ms. Stevenson's idea is a fantastic idea. I believe it's a fantastic idea. It almost sounds to me that you're suggesting that we open our own investigation into this situation, which we all are sort of doing independently anyway, trying to learn as much as we possibly can on our own. If we do it as a body in this way, to me it sounds like that we are, in whatever way a city council can, trying to investigate this issue. Would that be correct?
Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for affirming it is a fantastic idea. And I like how you phrased that as a question. I think it would be important to first compile the information and then decide. Okay. And I would hope that the information can get compiled before the 31st when the report is complete. I'm intending to make a second comment and maybe a third. The second one being, I'm not certain that what we received in this letter from the city manager in Cincinnati ensures this body will receive a copy of that report. And so I'd like to suggest that we actually ask the administration for a copy of that report so that we can use it alongside information that we've compiled as a body to better determine is an investigation the route to go and when we might want to start that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. And I think we need to follow up with the EPA as well to come and to have another meeting with them present and all the folks who can answer the questions rather than speculation. We will hopefully know more by the end of the month. Any other comments? Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. So it does sound like that there's, I wanted to make sure that I want to make sure it's clear. It sounds like there's support to explore what it might look like to hire a temporary operator of record from the Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, and that there's support to deepen that fact-finding with Cincinnati Waterworks to look at what a long-term, allowing them to operate the system on a long-term basis might look like. So if any council members don't agree with that or want to talk about that further, just make sure that you respond there. The other items I want to address are something that both, or Donna mentioned. Donna was talking about the tanks, the 3 million gallons, or whether they need to be replaced. Councilmember Hanrahan said that she doesn't, it's not quite known if they would need to be replaced if Cincinnati takes over or not. And again, I just think all of that reiterates, before we spend millions of dollars on potentially putting a new tank up there. Not that the administration has talked about that. I mean, we've heard nothing about that, and they would need to come to us, I would think, for some of those contracts. However, if we get to, and we need to understand before we even get to that point, whether it would be needed if Greater Cincinnati Waterworks takes over our system. Because let's say that we do have to put some tanks in there, we might have bond money. I mean, it might take bond money in order to do that. I mean, they're not going to come in and just pay all of our bonds off. If we decide 2 or 3 years later after this that maybe we don't want to operate our own system. Well, the brand new tank's up there. And from everything, or from things that I have heard, I don't believe, or I don't know if that it is certain that we would need a water tank up there, at least not for the emergency water storage purpose, if Greater Cincinnati Waterworks were to take over the system or have a long-term contract on the system. There are 2 different members of the public that spoke today brought up Ohio Revised Code 743.08, basically investigation by legislative authority. And I wanted to read 743.08 out loud just so that we completely understand the powers that we have as a legislative authority. So I'm going to go ahead and start now. The legislative authority of a municipal corporation in which waterworks are situated or are in the process of construction may appoint a committee for the investigation of all books and papers and all matters pertaining to the management of the waterworks at least once a year and more often if necessary by reason of the neglect of duty or malfeasance on the part of any officer of such waterworks. Any such officer found by the committee to be so offending shall be liable to removal from office by the legislative authority. And so, essentially what that is saying is that Ohio Revised Code is giving the legislative authority much broader powers when it comes to the water system than we would normally have as an authority. We would not normally be able to demand books or review papers without really the cooperation or a public records request in order to do that. But it's giving us authority here because I think the Ohio Revised Code realizes how important the safe operation of a water system is to the public. And so, as was recommended by, like I said, 2 different members, I think we need to keep this in mind about this authority and consider launching this committee, investigative committee, to potentially look further into whether there has been neglect of duty or malfeasance on the part of any officer of our waterworks. I'm not saying that there is any of that because I don't quite know the exact definitions of either of those, but I do think that we need to consider starting that committee so that that committee can start looking into it. And again, if that committee finds that either of those things have occurred, then it appears in here, and they're very well, we don't have Keith Moore here to help advise us on this, but it appears that the legislative authority might have some additional powers that they could take action on to help protect the citizens. So just want to make sure that we keep all of that in mind. So again, if we, my plan from this point on, now that it sounds like that I've heard that there's been support for the resolutions, my plan is to work with the law department over this next week to have 2 different resolutions drafted up. And again, if there's any other objections, please raise them. One to look into what it would be for a long-term operation, and then one for a temporary, potentially 6-month operator of record kind of being loaned to us for a cost so that we can have a professional manage the system and provide feedback and advice to council.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. And I think once the report comes out, we'll have a lot more information on how to, I think of the temporary operator of record, you could certainly do right if now or shortly thereafter if you want to, but I think the report will be a defining factor, and I think we should wait and see. Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to say similarly, Mr. Bonsall, in response to your question for feedback on your suggestion, I think the report should come first. I think that will be the most clarifying of all the information thus far, and coming from seemingly the most trusted source so far. I think the report hopefully will give enough guidance for what exactly does the new temporary operative record need to actually focus on. I would be concerned if without the report, I'm being asked to help say yes to someone not knowing what they need to do. I think our discussion today made it more clear to me as a body, we need some more understanding of how things should work before we can improve them. And so as I was also reading over revised code, I'm not clear from this, I haven't read the whole chapter yet. Is the committee just members of council, or can this committee be comprised of others? Does anyone know off the top of their head?
It's a question for the law department.
I think it might be as well. And so I'm in agreement that consideration of a new operator, definitely reviewing the report, and putting together an investigative committee could all be reasonable actions. I don't think they should come in any order. I think the report should come first. I think that would guide what does this person need to do if we do install a new person. And I think that person would then need to be part of guiding what we're looking at, because I don't think we as a body would know exactly in our own expertise what we're looking at, to your point around what do those words exactly mean.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you.
Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. So I do want to just be clear that the resolutions, especially the specific one about looking at what a long-term solution might look like, these are not any commitments by this body to, we're not committing that we are actually must go forward with that. This is basically requesting information. And in my opinion, I think that we should request both items of information, and the same thing with the operator of record. This is not committing anybody to that, it's at least starting the process. In considering that we potentially could be facing vetoes for one or both of those, one specifically, I would just recommend that this body start on at least moving forward as soon as possible. I think that we have been in the dark long enough. I think that we have been, ignored, and our requests have been not responded to long enough. I think it's time that we do everything that we can to get the information that we need to ensure that our citizens are protected. And then another note is that I don't honestly trust, I can hear the mayor can come and the mayor can talk, and I frankly don't trust necessarily that everything that he says is exactly correct. I don't have a trust on that because for so long we didn't hear anything. And so just because the mayor says that something happened here, something happened there, maybe he's being told wrong, or maybe he misunderstood. Or maybe he just doesn't understand, I don't know. But the point of it is that I truly believe that for us and for citizens to have a trust in the information that we're provided, I think that we need to have other sources. And so I do think that we should at least consider a first reading of both those at the next council meeting, if not maybe potentially more readings. But it is acknowledged that there will be a report that will come out. It's acknowledged that there could be more information, but I do think that we should at least get started on what this could look like and not continue to be behind and trying to play catch up.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Madam President. A lot of things talked about here, and I don't. I want to respect everything said, and I understand the concerns, but when we talk about transferring our services to Cincinnati, or I've got some serious issues with that. Secondly, it's my opinion only, that we have professionals checking our water on a daily basis. So we can look into other professionals if we wish to, but it's my opinion that we have professional people looking into our water system and testing it daily at the health department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden. Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to quickly respond. So whether we have professionals testing our water daily or not, the issue is that the system has been neglected for 40 years. And frankly, I don't trust the current mayor to give us the information that we need, like when it comes to long-term capital improvements planning for the system. And I don't really trust that we're always going to have a future mayor that's going to always put the capital long-term improvements of the city as a priority. I mean, these things are underground. These things are kind of out of sight. We didn't know about the engineering report for 5 years about the holes in the roof, whether or not it was fixed. And then another thing, kind of whether it was fixed or if it was fixed, did they actually, so once they did the repairs to the exterior holes to keep the birds out, were the tanks drained, inspected, and sanitized at that time? Because if they were welding and doing work on the roof and stuff where things could have fallen in, then, I mean, that possibly could have been a threat to the water system too. And so if we've got operators of our water system that aren't doing the basic things that professional water operators should do, I guess I don't understand why we would want to keep moving forward with that. And again, when we come back to this, all of this is just information gathering. This is not, none of this at this point is committing us, but I mean, I think it would be irresponsible of this council to put our head in the sand essentially and just trust that, okay, well, I guess it's gonna be fine, because I don't have a good feeling I don't have a good solid trust that it will be fine. Like, I want to make sure that we are moving forward in the city with, like I said, the water line replacements, that true evaluation of the towers about whether we need to replace them, are they good for 10 years, what have you. And I don't think that we're getting that with the current administration managing the system.
Thank you, Mr. Bonsall. Mrs. Hannerhan.
Thank you, Madam President. I think if we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk to Greater Cincinnati, or the Water Works, I think we're also going to have somebody look at what it's going to cost if we decided to replace our own tank, so we know what we're comparing to.
That will be in the report, whether we have to do that or whether we can keep those. That's why I'm saying it will be important, as Ms. Stevenson pointed out as well, that we wait for that report to come back, because it will be there. It will be the recommendation once that report comes back, whether we need to replace or whether that's sufficient in the short term to do some long-term planning.
Well, I'm also thinking long-term. I mean, how many times can we short-term fixing this? And do you have any idea when that report will be out?
I do not. My guess is shortly after the other tower is repaired.
I'm sorry, shortly after. I couldn't hear you.
The other tower is repaired, which is in the process of happening this week, is my understanding.
Well,
One tank is done, is my understanding, and the second one is supposed to be done this week or next week.
Well, I would agree then with Mr. Bonsall that we go ahead and move forward. With moving forward with Greater Cincinnati Water and doing the resolutions.
To do the temporary operator of record, or to
Both.
look in, or to run our water system?
Both.
And look into it how?
To do the resolution. I think we have to have them here to explain what they can offer us. They're not going to do anything without us asking them to do it.
No.
And we don't have no idea what they will or can or will do.
Thank you, Ms. Hannerhan. Comments? Procedures? Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to check in with the Clerk of Council and ask a question, if that's okay.
Certainly.
I made a suggestion earlier that we begin to, as members of council, funnel to the clerk of council's office information we've received, and I just wanted to get feedback. Is that manageable at this time?
To collect all of the information through the clerk of council's office?
And begin compiling it, maybe scanning it so there's one document, or if it's coming in as separate documents, compiling it into several attachments where you could send it out so we all have the same information.
I don't see why not.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it's clear. If you have information that has not been shared with the whole body that you have found helpful in thinking about what needs to come next, members of council, please share that with the clerk of council's office so that we can collectively make some decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Comments? Finished? No one make any motions? I will take it upon myself to talk to the administration about the temporary operator of record to see how we can look at that current contract and see if we can amend that to at least get that underway and get a cost, because there will be a cost associated with it. I got the indication that that is definitely something you all want to proceed with. Okay, so without objection, I will at least get some information to see if the administration can look at that and get a cost estimate for you so you can decide if you want to proceed that way. Yes, Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I missed a word or two. You're going to interact with the administration to get a quote for
The temporary, to see about Greater Cincinnati Waterworks acting as the temporary operator of record.
the fifth suggestion here. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That can concentrate solely on this water.
Thank you.
As Mr. Thompson pointed out, Mr. Gears wears many hats.
Yes.
And this maybe certainly might require someone to just wear one hat to take care of the situation. So I will take that upon myself to do. That'll be a task that I will do. And we'll have that information for you by the next council meeting. Anything else? We have no absent members. Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we adjourn.
Seconded by Mr. Breeden. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzwell.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanger.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned.